about it. So when I started looking at this, I started thinking about, well, what are the lessons that we can learn from that particular culture? And as I said at the beginning, when I started my career and I was doing my CPD qualifications, it was really out there, the whole thing about Japan and empowerment, particularly around teamwork, often held up about Toyota being such a good example as an employer, etc., etc. So starting to think about it from a different perspective and thinking about it maybe slightly from that well-being perspective, which is so high on my agenda at the moment, as I think it is all from you when I'm hearing you talking just now. There are various things that we can actually think about and learn from. And this, I think, is a really interesting one. And this talking about how we respect people. And part of Japanese culture is very actively showing people's respect, both for yourself, but also for other people. And bowing is such a huge part of that respect. But it's not just leaving it as something that we just, oh, yes, we respect each other. No, it's really active. It's really imbued and embedded in all grains of people's lives. And the whole culture of kindness, love, and respect are part of people's lives. And actually, I think that's really important right now. Really right now, if we can't do anything else, if we can show that kindness, that love and respect, it absolutely goes a long way. So that's my first kind of lesson on the table, but actually it being active, so it's not hidden, it's actually out there. And that doesn't always maybe chime completely with the British culture, but actually it's something that I try and do a lot, and I think it's really important. When we move on and look at the next lesson, this is quite interesting, and it's about, you know, what words do we need to be thinking about? What are the most important words in our vocabulary that we should be thinking about? And you know, there are actually three of them. One of them is actually saying thank you. So, you know, that's definitely really important, isn't it, as a leader, saying thank you and really rewarding and recognizing people for the work that they do. You know, not just once, not just twice, but actually having it really at the tip of our tongue. Thank you. I think, you know, in a Japanese culture, they're probably thanking every day, every moment. You know, I'm sure Lucy could add in there. You know, it's absolutely all the time on people's tip of people's tongues. It's so much part of that vocabulary. But I'm thinking about actually what we do as a leader and what we do as people that influence leaders. Do we really do that? Do we really appreciate people for the work that they do? And then linking on to that, and it's again really important, is do we actually say sorry? You know, do we actually put it out there if we make a mistake? Do we make it clear when that is important to say, actually, we didn't quite get that right? You know, are we able, have we got that emotional intelligence that we can verbalize it if we actually do make a slight mistake? You know, I'm only going to say this once, but you know, you think about, you know, the whole stuff that's going on there with Boris and stuff, and you think that's quite obviously the thing that actually hasn't happened there. So, you know, do we say sorry? And then when we say sorry, when we actually, it's the thing about giving and receiving feedback. So when we actually give feedback, we'll only feel good about giving feedback if it's received well. So it's the same with actually saying sorry and apologizing. You know, does the other person actually accept that and maybe say that's okay? And these are three things that are really embedded again in the Japanese culture. The whole thing about thanking people all the time, but also recognizing when you do need to say sorry, and equally recognizing when you actually need to say that's okay. So yeah, I think those things are really quite important when we think about what they mean for us. The next one is some of these words and phrases. I'm not even going to try and translate them, or say them, but they are phrases that are part of what goes on in Japan. We don't have these phrases, but I think all three of those are quite important. So Ikigai is something I use a lot in my coaching, and there's another slide which I'll show you in a few minutes, but it's really the purpose for living, the reason for living, the thing that is actually your passion, which we just heard from Simon, your passion, but also it might be what makes you money, and it might be your vocation, and it might be your profession, but it's actually thinking about how those things all interlink. And I'll show you a slide on that in a minute, but I'm sure you've come across that before. But there's these other phrases. There's the phrase, I'm not going to try and express it, but it's the one on the left-hand side, which loosely translate as I humbly exalt you in your state of exhaustion. Wow, what does that mean? But actually that is said often, and it's said often to people, probably the less recognized people in society. So something that you might say to, the refuge collectors, you might say to supermarket staff, you might say it to other people as well, but you say it to actually mean it, that people that are working so hard, and you think about our NHS colleagues here, it's an appreciation statement. We really do appreciate people that have put themselves forward and are working that hard. The one on the right hand side is a slightly different one, because that one is all about how you treat people from this point in your relationship going forward. And that's often said right at the beginning of a relationship. So it might be the first time you meet somebody, and the expectation is set out there very clearly to continue working with mutual respect. So these kind of phrases, I think, are fascinating, and all part of the way the world works over there. So this one is the one that I use in coaching a lot, and I find that really powerful to start thinking with people. Do what you love, do what you're good at, do what the world needs, and ideally do what you can be paid for, and that gives you this magic moment of ikigai. I think I'm quite lucky, because I think I probably do actually hit that bit in the middle. And I think most people will find that the balance might not be quite there, but we can work towards that. So, I think that's a really useful framework to coach people and to get people to think about the balance, particularly at the beginning of the year. I love doing this right at the beginning of, maybe a nice one to reflect on personally, as well as with people that you might be working with. Here we go. The next one is all about going the extra mile. That's really and again, how much do we do that? How imbued is that in our culture? The sorts of things the Japanese do, and I'll tell Lucy's story here. You go the extra mile. There might be something about directions, and I remember Lucy telling me, when she was in Tokyo and she was needing to go somewhere, and she asked somebody, not being able to speak Japanese very well, and the person actually took her to the destination. They didn't just kind of say, oh, it's 2 blocks down the road and turn right. They actually said, follow me. We will go there together. Actually, that really is going the extra mile, especially if it can be considerably out of somebody's way. This is lovely as well, isn't it? We all know about the Japanese blossom, and people try and go at that time of year in the springtime to see the cherry blossom and really treasure those simple nature's gifts. The whole concept of forest bathing, I absolutely love that concept, that you go and be out there in the trees and actually have that feeling of wellness and well-being. It's the equivalent of wild water swimming, isn't it? And actually, really treasuring those things, and those things that make you feel good. We've got, other simple lessons here about keeping the community clean. And I think that, I'm using that as a euphemism for keeping our mindset clean, our positive mindset, our growth mindset, as well as keeping the physical space clean. We've got elements of being green, and actually, again, how important is that? If we can do that not only for ourselves or organizations, but the environment. Skipping over that and looking at this one, actually, again, it's a really good coaching concept, isn't it? I think the spheres of influence, and thinking about, the one in the middle. What can we control? What what can we influence is the next centric circle, and what can't we control or influence. And at time of stress and worry, actually to go back to what you can control in the middle becomes a really important concept, and really focusing on that element. So many people spend an awful lot of time banging their heads against things that they can't control, where they'd be so much happier working in the sphere of influence that they can do something about. Really, really, really important for me, I believe. Two more lessons. Family time, how important is that? So difficult for us to do when we're all under stress and, you know, under all sorts of pressures from one side or another. But actually that's got to be important, hasn't it? You know, at the end of the day, that's what people look to. You know, when we all retire, will we be saying, I'm really happy I spent 70 hours a week doing that, or, you know, that I spent whatever time with my family? You know, it's very trite. I know it's very trite, but I think it's just really, really important just to say it as part of this. And my final one, which is why we endeavoured to show you the fireworks, was about reasons to celebrate, and actually really celebrating when things go wrong. And again, we could make a little parallel with that one, couldn't we, to actually keeping a list of our recognitions and our achievements, and feeling actually how good they are for us. So I'm going to take a breath and see where we are with all of that. You will get these slides. I will send them out